Hi, everybody, and welcome to EliteHockeyShooters.com. I'm Steve Erickson, joined in studio by Mr. Ron Johnson, owner and director for EliteHockeyShooters.com. And this segment, we're going to talk different aspect of hockey. We've all seen the game change, and that's the one thing we want to focus on right now. Ron, over the course of years, the game has changed in a variety of areas. What's the one or two significant changes that you've seen?
The two main areas that I'd say is that the game has gotten younger, for the junior level. Years being involved in junior hockey, that a lot of the players that came into the league were in their 19, 20-year-old. I was very fortunate, obviously, with the Richmond Sockeyes that we went with a very young team. I think we had 6 15-year-olds that one year. Went on to the national championship. And it showed people that younger players are capable of playing. Junior hockey, obviously with the pressure to win, but people realize that younger hockey players are very talented, and with all of the skill development, that's a number two areas that there's so many teachers now. When we played, you're very lucky, especially where I grew up, you're very lucky to find a skills instructor at all, and most of the people that taught us were, you'd go find a guy that played junior hockey, pro hockey to give you some instruction. Today, there's so many professionals out there that can help you improve your game. So I'd say that the kids nowadays are far more skilled and far stronger and faster than we were when we played. Now, it's a different kind of strength. I think that we had more of the functional strength, as you will, because we worked on farms. We did labor, like I worked, shoveling gravel in the summertime, working on the farm, and that sort of thing.
Nutrition in today's game plays a big, important role, and a lot of kids have a nutrition coach as well.
Well, everything's important. It's all about your performance, being ready for game day. And everything from strength coaches now, they have nutritional coaches, they have motivational coaches, they have counselors, they have, kids today that aspire to get to the higher levels are there's a lot of resources for them, which we didn't have. I just look at the weight training. Some of the common myths in weight training that we had back when I was 15, 16 years old, you would never dream of doing those things now.
No, and there's a lot of pressure on the kids to play, to go out and play the game too.
Well, absolutely, and it's all about pressure to win. There's a lot of money that goes into hockey. We're talking sticks. With junior hockey, they're buying sticks, they're buying skates, and sticks aren't $30 a piece anymore.
No.
They're $250 a piece. Now, I'm sure they get their deals, or sponsorship, but there's a lot of money, and it's all about winning. The travel costs nowadays, food costs, and the pressure to win, to bring in the fan, to bring in as a form of entertainment, to have a superior product. There's a lot of pressure on the younger players, and the elite players especially, to score goals.
Is there such a thing as too much pressure?
It's kind of it's an interesting concept, and you can look at that in two ways. There's pressure on everybody, as we can see with hirings and firings that go on in hockey all day long.
It's a business.
It's a business, and there's pressures under coaches to constantly get the best out of their players. There's different kinds of players. We've heard of the coach killers, the players that have exceptional talent. They show up, they play when they want to play. They're game breakers. They decide they don't want to play. They're not happy with the contract. They're not happy with this. They're not happy with that. They don't feel like playing. They get in an argument with the coach. You trade your best player, the guy that's got the most points. You trade a couple of those guys, or you fire the coach. Well, a lot of time the coach goes. So there's so much pressure on everybody. The players, the coach puts pressure on those players. And so whether there's a lot of internal pressure from players, I think most of that is the pressures we know that with the NCAA and pro contracts is that if you're scoring goals, you're going to go somewhere. And I think that's where a lot of the personal pressure comes from players.
I think you talk about scoring goals and keeping track of it. That comes into a concept you and I were talking earlier on about data tracking and keeping track of the data for scoring versus a variety of other areas too.
Well, it's kind of funny, and this is a common, it's a very good point, Steve. One of the discussions I have with parents all the time. Players, I try to treat practice like going to school. A kid goes to an English class. He sits in a classroom, the teacher provides him with content, subject matter. The kid goes to a practice. The coach provides him with content, subject matter. The kid goes to a game. Well, the game's kind of like a mini exam. You step on the ice, you check out what the coach has taught you, you check out your new skills, you succeed or you fail. You go to a quiz at the end of the week, you succeed or you fail. You take a look at your tournaments and your championships. I call those provincial exams. And I say to parents, why do kids not prepare? And you and I have talked about this many times. The best players track. They have a tendency to look at the game, make notes, track statistics. And in the NHL, you go to NHL.com, there's many statistics on there that you can look at and track players. But really, in junior hockey, there's not a lot. We talk about the common ones, plus, plus minus, goals and assists. And after that, what's left, right? It's up to the individual player. And some of the younger players I'm working with, I've designed a logbook with another company that I have, that it's for players to track. And I think it's very important as part of success in school and everything. It's called preparation. You have to go to a game, be prepared, know your opposition, know your opponent, know your goaltender, come out of that game, track what happened to you, what happened to the opposition, the successes, go to practice. I mean, coaches have a lot of good concepts. And you and I have been around hockey and know that you go to hockey school, at the end of the week, you say to a kid, well, okay, of all the things we've talked about, what have you learned? I have a good slap shot. I learned a wrist shot. And really, they don't keep track of what they're learning. And one of the things we do here is that kids, I give them note cards and things to take home. But if they don't track, how do they expect to have success?
And the coaches don't track it for them. They have to do it themselves.
Well, they don't, exactly. And a lot of coaches, I was lucky when I coached junior that we had a lot of statisticians that provided me with good information. I mean, they're great volunteers, invaluable information. And we had a wall board and we track stuff. And the first thing the kids do when they come in the dressing room, they look on the board. How many hits did I get? Who's leading in the hit department? Who's got this? Who's got, And, as with all, we can't always provide all the positive, gems. We have to provide some of the negatives. Some kids didn't get a hit in the whole game. And it's not that we want kids to go out and crush somebody, but just to let them know that there's a physical part of the game.
For sure. Now, this is the book you were talking about?
Yeah.
You can hold it up and show it to the camera.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have here, and again, this is Doc's Hockey, and it's based on a company that I have with Bryce Salvador with New Jersey. And what we do is we're trying to, Bryce has a great philosophy of doing whatever he can with some of the companies that he has, like Total Hockey, improve players, build companies that improve players. And the concept of this logbook was to provide kids with nutritional information that they can track, their weight training information, practice, pre-practice, post-practice, game statistics, and that sort of thing. And it's an exercise. Like, a lot of kids say, well, it's a lot of work. Yeah, but you go to school. I mean, you spend $50,000 a year or $30,000 a year in education. Mm-hmm. You study. You come out of it with a degree, but yet we don't follow the same concepts, before games and after games. And I think it's one of the most important parts of a game that kids neglect.
It's interesting you talk about the players, and how they track different things. When I go in either the home or visiting team dressing room, when I go take in a Canucks game, the one thing I always notice is when the final stat sheet comes into the room, the players will go over and they'll grab a copy, and they want to know how many hits they've either given or taken, how many shots they've had, and there's a whole pile of different statistics that the NHL keeps track of. And they'll go through this whole thing and they'll look at it and they'll say, oh, I only had 2 shots or 2 block shots or 2 missed shots.
Yeah.
And they track that whole thing themselves. And you'll often hear the players say, I didn't do too well on that one. And you don't know which one they're talking about, but you just hear them talking amongst themselves, and then you just get in and talk to them, in the media scrum after that. But the players really reflect on that a whole pile.
There's a couple things you probably heard. I've seen around the dressing room, especially with some of the amateur teams. The hardest working kid in the game gets a hard hat. They do that in some of the junior teams, right? I've seen kids outside our training center, because we're located in a rink, they'll walk by, they're wearing a hard hat. And it's just recognition. And I think statistics, there's a lot of kids. One of the most important parts of learning, and this will be another chapter, and we always talk about this, is that one of the most important things that players have to come to terms with is accountability. And when you look at a stats, now again, statisticians have an enormous task to do. They have to track a game. In the NHL, they have certain guys that track each component. So I mean, they're very lucky. But but to be accountable, we need to learn. We have to look at our mistakes. And a good, a stats package, where you walk in and there's a board and a leaderboard where the kids can track themselves. I think it's very important for the learning process to show how they're contributing to the team environment and to their own development.
Yeah, and it's not no I in the word team, as we all know.
Exactly.
There's more than one person playing the game, and it's the last line of defense is your goaltender, and everybody's got to get along. They've all got to work together.
His are pretty simple, aren't they?
It is.
How many pucks hit the net, and how many did you stop?
That's very true.
That's as black and white as it gets, and careers are made over that. And you take a look at players. I mean, how many players know I had 10 shots at the net, 5 hit the net, and I scored 1 goal?
Yeah.
That's very common, right? And it's interesting.
It is, but that's just the way the game has evolved over the last time, and we're going to talk to Ron Johnson more when we come back with LeadHockeyShooters.com. I'm Steve Erickson.